This was probably the best weekend of college football we've had up until this point of the season. I don't know when the last time this happened was, but there were 9 ranked teams that lost. There were a lot of surprising games, and there were a lot of winners and losers from this crazy weekend. Today, I'm going to be sharing my 10 biggest losers from week 5 of the college football season. Before we get to today's video, make sure to smash that subscribe button and turn on those notifications if you're new to my channel. If you're watching this video, odds are that you love college football. And odds are you aren't subscribed to my channel, so make sure to subscribe to one of the best college football communities here on YouTube. I'm posting videos every day during the season, so make sure to subscribe so you never miss a video. Also, make sure to drop a like on this video as well. It helps out with that YouTube algorithm and helps share the video with more college football fans. Plus, it only takes a second to do. Before I get to my 10 teams, drop a comment down below and let me know who you think the biggest loser was from this weekend. It's not often we have a team that wins that makes the losers video, but man, did Georgia almost have the loss of the season. They ended up with the victory, but they defeated Missouri by only 4 points. This was a game in which Georgia was favored by 4 touchdowns. The Bulldogs didn't even score their first touchdown of the game until the 9-minute mark in the 4th quarter. Through the first 3 quarters of this game, it was all Missouri. They were able to take Georgia's offense completely out of the game. If it wasn't for Missouri having to settle for a field goal on 5 drives, this is a game that Georgia likely would have lost. At the end of the day, Georgia still won, and they're 5-0. But this now makes back-to-back weeks in which the Bulldogs have looked really underwhelming on the field. I mean, last week they struggled to put away Kent State, and this week they struggled to put away Missouri, who might be one of the worst teams in the entire SEC. So I get it, they ended up winning the game, and it was an impressive comeback on their part, but I think we should be a little concerned with Georgia after these last 2 performances. Obviously, I haven't been able to watch every college football game this season, but I've been able to catch a solid amount. And with that being said, I don't think I've seen a team give away a game the way Kentucky gave away this one. They lost to Ole Miss on the road by only 3 points, but this was a game that Kentucky, honestly, should have won by at least 2 scores. Their special teams was awful as they missed an extra point and had a field goal that was blocked. Not to mention, there was a safety in the end zone that just shouldn't have happened. Then, late in the 4th quarter, the Wildcats had 2 costly turnovers when they were on the verge of scoring a touchdown. Overall, through the rest of the game, they looked pretty solid, but the amount of times they shot themselves in the foot in this game is truly remarkable. Like seriously, if Kentucky just would have played a clean game of football, this is a game they likely would have won by 14 or 17 points or so. It seems like every time they had a chance to either tie the game or take the lead, they just completely blew it in insane fashion. With this win, Kentucky likely would have climbed up more in the AP poll, but now they fall down. Things are not looking good for Jimbo Fisher and the Aggies as they fell by 18 points to Mississippi State. Through the first 5 weeks, the Aggies are now 3-2 and they've fallen out of the top 25. They've also essentially fallen out of SEC contention. I've talked about the Aggies a number of times this year, saying that their defense is legit and it's their offense that has me a bit concerned. Well, their offense scored 24 points in this game and had 400 yards of total offense. The problem was that their defense couldn't stop anything. Mississippi State scored 42 points and had nearly 500 yards for the game. Will Rogers threw all over them, and the Bulldogs' rushing attack rushed all over them. There was a lot of hype surrounding this Texas A&M team entering the season, but it looks like their 2022 campaign is pretty much already wiped at this point. With games left against Alabama, Ole Miss, LSU, and a few other SEC opponents, there's a legitimate chance that Texas A&M might be a borderline bowl team this season. After getting off to a really hot start and climbing up the AP poll, Oklahoma has turned into a disaster over the last 2 weeks. They lost at home last week to Kansas State, and they lost on the road by 30 points to TCU. It was just a few weeks ago where I was talking about this Oklahoma defense being one of the better defenses in all of college football. Obviously, every year Oklahoma has one of the better offenses in all of college football, but it looks like this season the defense would be the difference maker for them. Well, over the last few weeks, that's been a complete lie on my part. This defense looks horrible, and it looks like they can't stop anybody. With Dillon Gabriel out of the equation, it looks like their offense can't do much either. This was an Oklahoma team that we were talking about as a potential playoff threat just a couple weeks ago, but now they're 0-2 in the Big 12, and it looks like their season is already over. One of my personal biggest disappointments of the entire weekend was Minnesota. They were number 21 in the country and entered the game 4-0. Their offense and defense were among some of the best in all of college football. Well, they had absolutely no answer for Purdue. The Gophers scored only 10 points as Tanner Morgan threw 3 interceptions. Mohamed Ibrahim didn't play for Minnesota, so I'm not exactly certain how much different the game would have been had he been out there. But without him on the field, the rushing attack for Minnesota was non-existent. They rushed for 47 yards on 26 carries, averaging less than 2 yards per carry. The defense was still solid overall as they forced 3 turnovers and really held Purdue's offense in check. It was just that on offense, Minnesota truly looked horrible and looked like they couldn't move the ball at all. I talked about Minnesota probably being a lock to reach the Big Ten title game, but looking at how their division looks right now, it is truly up for grabs. No, seriously, take a listen to the Big Ten West. Northwestern, Nebraska, Purdue, Illinois, Minnesota, and Iowa are all 1-1 in conference. Even Wisconsin, who's 0-2, is just 1 game behind. Seriously, all 7 teams in this division have a legitimate chance at reaching the Big Ten title game. We'll stay in the division and talk about Wisconsin, who just got dismantled by Illinois at home. The Badgers lost by 24 points, and their offense did nothing for the game. Graham Mertz completed only half of his passes for 200 yards with 2 interceptions. Up next is something I had to double check to make sure it was true because this was truly unbelievable. For the game, Wisconsin had only 2 rushing yards on 24 attempts. Yep, they had 2 rushing yards for the entire game. Braylon Allen, who's arguably one of the best running backs in all of college football, rushed for only 2 yards on 8 carries. After starting the season ranked inside the top 25, Wisconsin has lost 3 of 4 games and just fired their head coach. Entering the season, they were expected to be one of the better teams in the entire Big Ten. Well, through the first 5 games, they're one of the worst. Their offense has been pretty horrible so far this season, and their defense hasn't been as great as well. For the first time in what seems like forever, Florida State finally had some momentum and hype surrounding their program. They were 4-0 on the season and were ranked inside the top 25. They welcomed another top 25 team to town in Wake Forest, and they pretty much got outplayed through the last 55 minutes of the game. Florida State quickly scored a touchdown in the first 3 minutes, and it looked like they'd be in business in this contest, but they were outscored 31-14 the rest of the way. Florida State had plenty of offense as they had 400 yards total for the game, but 11 penalties for 100 yards, a turnover, and struggling to convert on 3rd down really is what cost them in this contest. I still think Florida State is going to be a solid team and they're going to be in the hunt for the ACC, but this was a chance for them to prove that they truly are a legitimate threat in the conference. Instead, they let Wake Forest come into town and pretty much take care of business from start to finish. Well, Pittsburgh suffered one of the worst losses of the entire college football season as they lost at home to Georgia Tech. This is a Georgia Tech team that's been one of the worst Power 5 teams over the last few years. They just fired their head coach, and you let them come into town and essentially dominate you in the second half. If it wasn't for a last-second touchdown from Pitt, this would have been a 2-score game. Pittsburgh really blew it in this one, as they had 3 costly turnovers and had 12 penalties for 75 yards. They also couldn't convert anything on 3rd down, as they went 2 of 12. This wasn't an ideal start to ACC play for Pittsburgh, as they're now 0-1 in conference play. Based on how their division is looking this year, there's still a solid chance they can reach the ACC title game, but this loss certainly wasn't a great way to start. With 9 minutes left in the second quarter, Auburn led LSU 17-0. Well, their field goal with 9 minutes left would be their final score of the game, as LSU would outscore Auburn 21-0 the rest of the way and come out with the victory. Auburn now is 3-2 on the season, and if it wasn't for last week's miracle win against Missouri, this would be a team that was 2-3 and near the bottom in the entire SEC. I mean, it's seriously been a very tough season for Auburn up until this point. They beat San Jose State by only 1 score, they got dismantled by Penn State losing by 30, they pulled off the miraculous victory last week against Missouri, and in this one, they blew a 17-point lead and lost to LSU. When looking at Auburn's remaining schedule, they have Georgia, Ole Miss, Arkansas, Mississippi State, Texas A&M, and Alabama still on their slate. I don't think it's much of a hot take to say that Auburn is essentially a shoo-in to miss a bowl game this season. I mean, they've just looked awful this year. If there's any sort of silver lining of Auburn absolutely sucking, maybe it's that Brian Harsin will eventually get fired at some point this year. But again, that's the only silver lining with this Auburn season. I can't believe I'm going to say this, but they could certainly use Bo Nix right about now. After a dream season in 2021, it looks like the clock has struck midnight for Michigan State as they lost their third straight game, losing by 14 points to Maryland. This Michigan State offense just looks awful so far this season. They can't get anything going in the passing game, and their rushing attack without Kenneth Walker is pretty bad. For the game, Michigan State barely had 300 yards of total offense. Through the first half of the season, Michigan State is easily the biggest disappointment so far in the entire Big Ten. They're currently in last place in the Big Ten East, and they're one of only 3 teams in the entire Big Ten that has yet to win a conference game so far this year. But on the bright side, at least they gave Mel Tucker $100 million. Well, those are my 10 losers from this weekend. Which team do you think was overall the biggest loser? Or was there a team that really disappointed you that should have been on this list? Whatever your thoughts are, let me know in the comment section down below. Before you leave, make sure to smash that subscribe button and turn on those notifications if you're new to my channel. If you love college football, then this is definitely the place for you. As I mentioned at the beginning of the video, I'll be posting videos every day during the college football season, so make sure to subscribe so you never miss a video. Also, make sure to drop a like on this video as well. It helps out with that YouTube algorithm and helps share the video with more college football fans. Plus, it only takes a second to do. As always, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you all in my next video.